Hey, welcome to my YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe. So in this video, we want to talk about connecting our play-by-play data from the NHL with our shift data from the NHL. So that's basically what we're going to do today. So the first thing we want to do is we want to just look up what we did in the last few videos. So 2 videos ago, we created and transformed our play-by-play data. And in the last video, we created a player shift table and a shift index table. So we'll just start off by loading those. So we'll say select everything from play-by-play adjusted. And then we'll select the other 2 tables as well. So we'll say select everything from player shifts. And finally, we'll say select everything from shift index. So now if we highlight all of this, we can run all 3 scripts at the same time. Okay, so this is what we created in the previous 2 videos. So we have a table, a shift index table with just every single shift, and every shift is defined as either a player getting off the ice or a player getting on the ice. So every time that happens, a new shift starts. Then we also have the player shifts table, where you have the shifts of every single player in every single game. And finally, we have the play-by-play data, which has all the events from this particular season, the 23-24 season. So what we want to do in this video is basically we want to combine our event data with our shift index. So all we want to do is we want to create a new column in our play-by-play table where it tells us which shift it is. So that's basically it. This is going to be a fairly short video, I hope so. Okay, so let's just start off by selecting our play-by-play table, and then we'll join it with our shift index table. So in the play-by-play table, we have a game time, and we need to combine that with the start and end time. So let's just start off by taking the play-by-play adjusted, and let's call it as P for play-by-play. And then we want to join our shift index table, and we'll call that S for shift. So how do we want to join this? Well, this is a little bit complicated actually, because there are events that happen at the edges of the shift index. So if an event happens at exactly 28 seconds, should we then take this shift or this shift? So let's just start off by saying whenever the game time is in between, and then we're just ignoring all the edge cases. So we'll just say P game time equals to, or has to be larger than S start, and P game time has to be smaller than S end. And is there a mistake here? Let's try and run it to see if it works. Oh, I forgot to put in the on. Now I got it. So it has to be on. Game time has to be larger than. So now let's try and run it. And then just go all the way to the end. and you can see that it puts in, let's also sort it by the event ID, because now it's not really coming out in a useful way. So let's say order by event ID. One more thing, you can see here that there is a lot of event IDs for the and that shouldn't be the case, but that's because we have different games. So all of these are different game IDs, but we're connecting only based on game time and start and end time. But we also have to make sure that the game ID is the same. So the game ID from the play-by-play data has to be the same as the game ID from the shift index table. Okay, so now I think it should work. So let's try and run it again, and this will take a little while because it's ordering the data. Okay, so it took 23 seconds, so not too bad. So now the data is ordered, and every time the game time is between the start and end time of a shift, then it gives us the shift index. So you can see here that in the beginning you have some edge cases where the game time is 0 or the game time is 35 seconds. So those are edge cases where it's not in between times, it's not in between shifts. So we have to take care of those as well. So the question is whether or not we include the players getting on the ice or we include the players getting off the ice. So for instance, when we do have a period start and a face-off, we want to include the players that gets on the ice, whereas when we have a stoppage, we want to include the players that are getting off the ice, because that's the last play that they are on for, and then the next play will always be a face-off, and for that play we have to put on the new players. So how do we make sure that this happens? Well, it is a little bit complicated, but we have to work on the left join here. So let's just say that this one always has to be true. The game ID always has to be equal to. So we can say that it always has to happen, and then this one has to happen, or, so we'll put in an or here. So now the game time has to be between start, or the game time has to be so the game time has to be between the start value and the end value without including the edge cases. So now we have to say or. Let's put this in a parentheses just to make sure that things are working. So what happens when we have what happens when, let's say, peak game time is equal to the start value? Well, when the game time is equal to the start value, that means, so in that case, we are including the players getting on the ice. And when do we want to do that? We want to do that when there is a face-off or a period start. So we need to put this in a parentheses. So when the game time is equal to start, then we also have to have either a face-off or a period start. So the P event has to be equal to a face-off or the P event has to be equal to a period start. So now what we're saying is, so the game ID always has to be equal to the game ID. And I think we need to put this all in parentheses. And either this one, the game time has to be in between the start and the end value, or the game time has to be equal to start and be either a face-off or a period start. So let's try and run this first. So in this case, we should see that the period start and the face-offs should now be included over here. So we shouldn't see null values, we should actually see shift indexes for the period starts and the face-offs. So let's try and run it. And we need one more parenthesis. Okay, so now let's see what happened. Now we included the shift index where the game time is equal to the start value of the shift, and the event is either a face-off or a period start. So the last thing we want to do is we want to include all other situations where the game time is equal to the end value. So that, for instance, so this will work when we have a stoppage, and then the new players, then the old players are still on the ice, and we want to include those in the shift. But there will also be situations where there's a shift on the fly and an event happening at the same time. In that case, we have to define, do we want to include the players getting off the ice, or do we want to include the players getting on the ice? So I've just decided to say that if there's an event at the same time as a shift, as a on-the-fly shift, then I want to include the players getting off the ice, because I'm thinking that player has more to do with the event than the player getting on the ice. So basically we just want to say that whenever the game time is equal to end and the game time is and the event is not a face-off or a period start, then we want to include the players getting off the ice, if that makes sense. So this is a little bit complicated, but it's just how we set it up. So we'll just say P game time equal to S end value, and the event now has to be different from, so we'll do it like this. a face-off, and the event has to be different from a period start. We forgot an OR here, so now so it should work now. So first of all, the game ID has to be the same. Secondly, if the game time is in between the times, the start time and the end time of an shift, then we want to include it. If the start time of the shift is equal to the game time, then we only want to include the shift or include the players on that shift when there is a face-off or a period start, because that's the case where we're putting on the players. And the last case is whenever the game time is equal to the end value of the shift. So that means we're including the players that are getting off the ice, and we want to do that in every other case when it's not a face-off or a period start. So this should work now. So let's just try and run it, and I think it's working. Okay, so let's just take a look at it now. So you can see the game time here. So the first two events is a period start and a face-off, and they are happening at 0 seconds, obviously. And then there's an event, a stoppage at 35 seconds, and a face-off at 35 seconds. So let's just try and look at it. So the first two events that happen is also the shift index, the first shift index. So it ends with a 1, and that shift goes from 0 to 28 seconds. So that's correct. Then you have the stoppage. So this is the stoppage event. So here we said that the shift index is number 5. That's the shift that goes from 33 seconds to 35 seconds. So the players that were on for that shift is included in the stoppage play. Then the next place is a face-off, and now we've taken the 6th shift index. So it's the players getting on at 35 seconds that are now included. So this is a little bit complicated, but it does work. I promise you that much. And there should be no null values. So, but let's just say that this is it. Now we created a table, or we've created a query for a table. Let's call it that. So the last thing we want to do is we want to create a table. So we could say, we could call this one create table play-by-play shift index, just to say that it's a play-by-play table where we are including a shift index column. So now we've created a connection between the play-by-play data and the shift data. So theoretically, we could, based on this shift index, we could find out which players were on the ice, because we have the player shift table, which connects each player shift to a shift index. So we could use this to say who's on the ice. Anyway, we want to just create this table, but this will make a mistake. So let's just try and do it here. So the problem is that we have duplicate values because there are two game IDs, because we're taking everything from the play-by-play table and we're taking everything from the shift index table. And this means that there are duplicate values. So we do have to specify which columns we want to include. So I'll just run this again just to see what kind of columns we have, and then we'll clean it up just a little bit now as well. So we want to include game ID from the play-by-play table. We want to include season, away team, home team, event, team, period, venue. We want to include game time for sure. Let's include season stage as well. Now, situation code, we don't really need that because we have this tells us about the string state, but we already have a column called string state, so we'll just ignore that one. Home team defending side, we'll ignore that one. We just use that to fix the X and Y coordinates, but we already done that, so we'll just leave this one out. We can include the type code, the event. Let's just go down here. Sort order, we don't need that because the event ID is already sorting the data, so let's just ignore that one. The X chord and Y chord, we don't need those because we have the adjusted ones, X and Y, over here. So we'll just say reason. Let's include that one. Shot type. Penalty. Penalty in minutes. Player 1. Player 2. Player 3. The goalie. The string state. The X and the Y. If it's a goal, if it's a shot on goal, if it's a Fenwick, if it's a Corsi, and the event ID we need to include as well. Then we got the zone, the score state, and we got the last event, we got the time since last event, we got the shot distance, we got the shot angle, and finally we want to include the shift index from the other table. So we'll include shift index as well. And I think this should be it. So now when we create the table, we're actually done for this video. Then in the next video, we want to start preparing the play-by-play table so that we can create a XG model. Now, most of this is already set up correctly. We have a score state, we have time since last event, and we have shot distance and so on. So those are variables that we'll use in our XG model. But we'll do that in the next video. So we'll just create this table and then that's it for this video. So let's just run this. Okay, so now we've created the new play-by-play table where shift index is included. And you can see here that there are close to 500,000 events in the play-by-play data. So this is great. So now we've connected our play-by-play with our shift index. So now we can create a relationship between the two tables and we can find out who's exactly on the ice for every event. But we don't want to do that in SQL. We'll just create that connection in Power BI when we get to that point. But we need to have this connection. So we need to connect the play-by-play data with the shift index table. And we've done that now, so that was all we wanted to do in this video. So I'll just end the video here. Make sure to check in next week. So goodbye.